Hello everyone, welcome to module 2 of our Spring Security course. So this is the first lesson of our module 2 and now we are going to talk about few additional details about the Spring Security, right? In the first module we learned about the login process, we learned about some of the internals of the Spring Security, and we also learned about the registration process. So in this lesson, we are going to look into that process, how you can secure your registration process a little bit one step ahead and have that email verification process in picture, okay? Now, in terms of the standard workflow is you create an account with the system, right? And now we will create the account, but the login will be by default disabled. So we will not let you log in until you verify your process, okay? Uh, our application will going to send you an email with a link. There will be a token and a URL. You click on that URL, you verify, and then you will be good to go. All right. So if the token is valid, you will be granted access to the login process. You use your username and a password, get into the system. And if it's not, it's an invalid token. Uh, what is going to happen is we will give you some messages or maybe some corrective action or to option to resend the verification email again to your account. Right? So that's an overall kind of the high level of overview what we are going to do in this lesson. Again, this lesson is going to be a little longer and it is going to be a pure technical one. All right. So before we get into those details, I quickly want to talk about few the terminologies and few things which I think those are going to vary from application to application and the level of a security you want to put in place. Okay. Now the first thing is our secure token. All right. So this is the process where we will be creating a secure token and that token will be sent into the email for the verification process, right? So we will be storing that secure token into our system. Is the one option is we create a secure token by using the username information plus maybe the time information and some other aspect, and then we create a token out of it, okay? And the idea is you send that token on as an part of the email process. Someone clicks on that URL and once they get back, we basically pull out the user information from that token and then do the validation, right? So that's a one way of doing that thing. Now the another way is store token as separate entity, okay? And this is what I'm going to do, right? So what does this mean is we will create a separate table. We will store the token with some additional information and all the details. Now there are pros and cons of each and everything, and how you create a secure token. You can use a different kind of encryption mechanisms or a hashing algorithms. I'm not going to talk about those one. As I said, right, you can use maybe you can use a SHA-256 or something like that, append user information or use a random generation series and all those things. It's up to you how you want to do that. So on a high level, these are the two things. You store information onto the user table as a one field, name a token, embed and encode everything into that one. The second option is which we are going to use is we will create a token, store it into a separate table, have a relation with the user table, and then we basically fetch an information and then validate rest of the things. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. Okay. All right. So let's get into the details. So the first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the user entity class and I'm going to add two things, in short one thing here, right? As of now there is no way Spring we can tell Spring that this user is active or not active, right? Okay, so I'm going to add a boolean field which indicates that whether this user account is active or it's inactive, okay? And then that information will be fed to the Spring Security so that the Spring Security can take a decision during a login process whether it's going to allow you to log in into the system or not. All right. So I have added this field as an account verified field, and this field indicates whether your account is verified or not. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to let Spring Security use this information, and to do that, again, what we are going to do is we are going to go to the Spring Security, our custom user detail service. You remember we created that one. And now in this service, if you look into the user detail interface, right, there is a method which says if this is enabled or not. So we are going to use this field to allow login if the account is verified, and or we will not allow you to log in if the account is not verified. Okay. All right, so I have added this field. Okay, enable. So I am getting it based upon the that flag which is stored into the entity level, and now in the disable field I am passing this value. The rest of the things will be automatically taken care by the Spring Security, right? You just need to let Spring Security know whether this user information or a user account is disabled or not. Okay, now the next part of our process is entirely going to focus onto the registration process and how we can send out the verification email. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a secure token entity, or the JPA class, which is going to store the information into the token information into the system. And the next thing I'm going to talk about the service which is going to create that token. All right, so our secure token class is ready, and there are a few things. So this is the token, which is the actual token we are going to store into the system, and I'm making it as a unique. And there are a different way you can do it. For now, it's a small application, and again, the token is going to be really large, so the probability of having a unique token is very low. And also, once the token is verified, I'm removing it right away from the system. Okay, but let's say your application is working on a high transactional site or a high volume site where the number of tokens are really high. Probably you want to take a different approach altogether. All right, so that's up to you how you want to handle it. And now I'm creating a timestamp. Will not get into the details. The other thing is expire at. I'm already upfront adding a field which says for how long this token is valid. You have a two-way. You can basically, based upon the created timestamp, you can use the other calculation process to see when to how long this token is valid. I'm using a different approach. Before storing that information into the database, I'm adding expire at field, but the how I am calculating it, it's a configuration. Okay, and the interesting thing is for now, I'm creating a relation with the user, but this is not a required first thing because I want to use this entity or a secure token table for other purposes as well, which we will be talking about during this course. All right. And now the idea is if it's a user-based token, for example, registration process or a forget password information, I can also get the user information based upon the token ID, right? And on the it's other way around. Based upon the user, I can see how many tokens, valid tokens are there into the system. All right. So that's an overrun. There is nothing specific other than that. So I'm just using those fields. And if I go to the user entity table, I have added another relation which is the one to many. If you see onto the secure token, it's a one many to one, and onto the user entity is one to many, because one user can have a multiple tokens. And then rest of the details are the standard JPA details. Now we have to almost three things are ready, right? We created a user token. We have the relation between user entity and a token. We added a information into the Spring Security to only allow verified user to log in into the system. Now the next step for us is to uh, add this information during the registration process. So we have already seen the registration process. Now I'm going to take a one step ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a token, add that token into the system during the registration process. If everything works fine, we create a token, store it into the system. So for now, I have added a method saying send registration confirmation email. So this is going to do a few steps for us. Once the registration process is successful, that means we are able to save the user into the system without any issue. We are going to call this method send registration confirmation email. Now this is going to do a few things. First, it is going to generate the token. Second, it is going to send out the email to the customer. Okay. Now the email process, uh, the focus of this uh, tutorial is not about the email. I will give you a brief overview of the email process, but I have another tutorial which talks about in detail how you can use the Spring Boot and Thymee leaf to send out the emails. All right. So you can, in any case, I'm going to talk about on a very high level about the email things. Okay. So let's do one thing. First, let's generate a token, save that token, and the next thing we are going to do is to send out the um, email to the customer. All right. So since I need to perform certain operations related to our secure token, right? There are two things which I'm going to use apart from the standard JPA repository function. First is I want to find out the token based upon a token. Okay, and the reason for that one is if someone use that token, I will fetch that information, verify it if it's a valid token, if token is not expired, and then probably also want to fetch out the user information on top of it. So that's the reason I want to use this method. And the second method which I am using here is to remove the token in case it is used. So for a successful registration where you have verified your email, the moment it is verified, I'm going to remove the your token from the system. Now the next thing what I'm going to talk about is I will be using a service to support few operation, the token operations for us, right? So one of that operation is we will creating a token using a certain mechanism, encoding mechanism, or I'm sorry, token creation mechanism. And as I explained earlier, this is entirely based upon your requirement. If you want to create a very secure tokens, I think you can use some other advanced algorithm to do that, but I will let you to decide on those things. Two things which you have to be very clear that for this token, I need three things. All in all, I need to make sure that I am able to find out the information based upon a token ID, because that is what I will be getting once customer click onto the link. Second, I should be able to find out the user information for that token. The reason is because without that token, I will not, if I don't able to find the user information, right? How do I know which user account I need to enable? So while you creating a token or your token algorithms, you have to keep those things into your mind. So this is, there are a few things. For example, I have already created this default security token service. Okay, they have certain method, and the only interesting method for us for now is the create secure token, because this method is going to create the token for us, right? So I am using a base 64 encoder. This is a very standard algorithm, and again, the focus of this tutorial is not to talk about the encoding algorithm, so I will keep it aside. So I'm creating a token value based upon a certain algorithm. This is very standard one picked from Spring Oath implementation. So I am storing that token. Next thing, I am setting a expiration time, right? So whatever the current time is, I am adding few seconds to that one, and the seconds are I am using token validity in second from the property file, which is the 8 hours right now. Okay, so my token is valid for 8 hours. If you click on the link within the 8 hours, you will be verified. But if let's say you haven't clicked on that and you clicked on after 8 hours, you will get the invalid token exception or a message. All right, and then I have a few other methods which basically save a token if you already have a token created by some other meanings. Based upon a token ID, I'm giving an option to find out the token, and this is required because once someone clicks on that link in the email, This is the method we will be calling to get the token information. Uh, there are a few things like, for example, you can remove a token by just a token, or if you have a secure token class, you can remove that one. Now with that thing, what we are going to do is we are going to open our user service, okay, and we are going to enhance our send registration confirmation email. Okay, so let's do one thing. We will create a token first, okay, and now in the secure token I'm going to set user as our user, because this is going to set the relation, and then with my secure token repository I'm going to save this. Okay, so this basically completes the first half of our process, where we have done the registration, we have disabled the user login process by default, created a token for the user, assign the token or set the user and the token relation, and save everything into the database. Now the second or the last part of this application is we are going to send out an email to the customer, and then we basically we are going to create a method into the system which is going to accept the request, verify the token, and then take a corrective action. Okay, so for the email, as I said, right, I will be talking a little bit about that one. So I have an email service, and I'm going to use Leaf as a underlying templating engine, which we are already using for the front end layer as well. Okay, and now I already have a default email service. Okay, so for this one, template engine is nothing but it's an abstraction, Spring abstraction on top of the different templating engine, right? And since Leaf is a typical templating engine, so that means it is going to support our email process. And I have added a few dependencies for those one. I'm adding a link to the to this tutorial if you want to learn how to use a Spring Boot to send out different kind of emails, right? So let's quickly go there. So I have added a dependencies as Spring Boot starter mail. So this is going to add the required dependencies for my, or the mail dependencies for my Spring Boot application. All right, good. So what we are doing here is we have an abstract email context. I will talk about this in a little detail. And then in this email context, we are passing a certain information. For example, to whom we should send email, what will be the subject line to, and all those things, and the different processes, even the email template, right? So this is nothing but a location of your Leaf template. And what is going to happen is template engine is going to process it, and it is going to give you the output. So it will process your Leaf template and parse it into HTML. All right, the context is nothing but the variables which we can pass. So for example, let's hold on, I will give you that more information, right? So you can go through this one, but since I don't want to explain it, otherwise this tutorial will take another 20 to 30 minutes. All right, and now to talk about the email context, this is nothing but an abstract class and containing some information, some standard information, and then it's a map which contains the variables which you are using into Leaf template, right? So those variables will be processed and the values will be replaced by the runtime values. Okay, okay, so now you see this first name, I'm passing it as a verification URL, right? So the first name is whatever your first name you are entering into the registration process. Verification email is the URL with a token. Okay, and now when you see these context, right, so that means I have defined the values for this first name. I have passed the values as a key value. So the key will be first name and the value will be the actual value of the first name. Similarly, key will be verification URL and value will be the final URL. Okay, so that is how it works. Now we have defined our email service, we have our email verification template, which will be processed by the templating engine, convert into the final HTML by parsing all these placeholders with the value which we are sending, and then in our email service we are just sending out the email. Now the last part is in the same send registration confirmation email, we will basically kind of initialize our email process. So this is our, we have created an account verification email context, which is an extension of the abstract context. Okay, and you see in this one what we are doing is in the init method we are passing a user, which is nothing but our user entity. Okay, and now we are filling a certain details. For example, first name we are getting for the first name. Now this template name, because this is an email verification, we are using this template. All right, and now subject line is complete your registration. You can make it dynamic, you can pass whatever value you want to pass. Set from, you can make it dynamic. For example, you can populate this value from your application.property, or maybe let's say you are storing some information into the database. Email to whom you want to send will be taken from the customer profile. Now there are a few more details. The build verification URL and a token I'm not using it, so you can ignore it. But again, from our default user service we are calling this build verification, and the base URL is nothing what we are injecting it from the application.property file, which is this one. Okay, and then token is the other value which is we getting from the secure token, and we are just building this URL and storing it. Okay, so with that, if you run your application, what is going to happen is you will be getting an email, a verification email, and your account will be disabled by default. But now once you get the email, someone will click on that URL and those will be verified. So the last part what we are going to do is we are going to use our registration controller. Okay, and we are going to add a method here saying verify. So this is my verify method in the controller, my registration controller. Don't go for this error for now. So I'm expecting a parameter as a token. The first thing what I'm doing is if token is empty, I want to give us a kind of a customized message. That's the reason I'm setting required as a false. Otherwise I could have set required as true. All right, and then I'm picking this value from the resource bundle and then sending it to the reader login page where the error will be shown. The second, okay, now if let's say during the registration process, right, we am saying through the user service verify the user, right? So let's say if I invalid token, again I'm catching that exception, and this is the custom exception we are throwing. All right, so that we identify or we know what to do in order if you get that message or get that exception. So I'm filling some custom information here and then sending it to the login page. And the last, if everything looks good, we basically send again to the login page but a different kind of a message. So now the critical part remaining is the verify user token. In this one we will do two things. We will basically get the token information, verify the token information. If the token information is not valid, we throw a message or an exception. If the token is verified, we set the user account as active. And the second thing is we are going to remove the token from the database because we don't want to save the unused or invalid information into the system. So this is my verify user method in the user detail service. So I'm doing, there is no kind of black magic here. So I'm getting a token from the system. If now there are, I'm throwing an exception saying token is not valid. It's a generic exception. Now let's say this is not the case. Okay, so we are getting the user information. Now how we are getting a user information? Because token have a, I know for this token I will get the user information because this token is saved with respect to a user profile. Okay, so I get the user information, and if something goes wrong, I don't want to move away, I will throw kind of an error there. Okay, now the last part of this one is, let's say if everything is valid, user is not invalid, token is valid and everything else, I'm setting the user account verified as true, saving the user information. And the last thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the token from the database because this token is already verified. So there is no fun of keeping that token into the system until unless you want it for a historical purpose. So you have to extend your token secure token class, then you can add this is already used by this one on this date, blah blah blah, whatever is your reporting requirements. All right guys, so with this one, our end-to-end implementation of user registration with the email verification is complete. Now let's do one thing. We will start our application, do a user registration. We'll go through a couple of steps to see how it works out. All right. By the way, don't forget to add the email properties right into your application.property file. By email properties, I mean to say you need to provide the SMTP configuration so that Spring can send out an email. All right, so our application got started. Let's do one thing. Let's go to the registration process, okay? And I'm going to fill out the information quickly. Okay. All right. Let's click on registration process. Okay. So it says your account is registered. Let's quickly check. We have the account, right? And if you see, the account verified is 0. That means this account is not verified yet. Let's go to the token table and see we already have a token for that one, and the customer ID is 24, which is this one. Now let's look into our email to see if we got the email with the URL containing the token. So we got this email saying that your account is pending for verification. Let's go back here, use this URL. So first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposefully going to change this token to see if we got that message saying invalid token or not. All right, it seems that the token is expired or has been modified, right? Now let's use the original token or the URL. So now it says thanks for your account, verification is done and you should be able to log in. Let me run the user process again, and you see now say account is verified, and if I try to see the token, it will say token is not there. Okay, now if I try to log in, it will take me to the login page. Okay, so one workflow which we forgot to test is, let's say you register yourself and you haven't verified your email, right? Then let's see, then we will try to log in and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to create a new account quickly and we'll see that in action. All right, guys. So I'm using this dummy email. A message that your account is verified, and immediately I got this message because this account is still not verified. All right, so I hope that give you an idea how you can have a one more level of a security to your user account by verifying or letting customer to verify their account before you uh, allow user to log in into the system. In the next one, we are going to talk about the logout process because that's a critical part of any login process. You want to give an option for a user to safely log out, to clean out any kind of a session information before. I hope you like this tutorial and this series. And if you like it, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel.